Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Life Mastery TV, your source for inspiration, empowerment, and fulfillment. My name is David McLeod. I am your Life Mastery coach and author of the book, A Life to Die For. Today, we are doing episode number 161, and the title of our episode is A Source of Miracles. I'd like to remind everyone who's on the live presentation that this is a live presentation, and so how you can participate is by putting questions into the chat area or comments, or whenever we ask you to participate, please feel free to participate as much as possible, because we get a lot out of the interaction that happens with you. So why don't you all just get started and try out by just saying hello and where you're from. Love to find out where you're from. Hello there, Lorelei, and welcome. Glad to see you here. I'm going to just get started. Excuse me. So, miracles are events in the physical world that most people would describe as impossible, or at least beyond the capabilities or powers of ordinary humans. They are almost always unexpected in the sense that they defy the understanding of logic and linear thinking. And due to our somewhat limited perspective, we tend to associate the occurrence of a miracle as the product or manifestation of a divine entity, which in a sense it really is, isn't it? Now, when we think of miracles, most of us think of the many amazing feats of Jesus Christ, whose most highly regarded miracle, and the one which in many people's minds elevated him to the status of God, was his resurrection from the dead. Miracles are always connected to faith, and those who believe with their whole hearts are empowered to manifest miracles more or less at will. In fact, Jesus himself said that all this and more will you also do. In this day and age of science and logic and reason and so forth, it seems challenging for us to believe in the concept of miracles. And yet, if we take a moment to step back and just look at our lives and observe the world around us, we can easily see that there are things that appear to be quite beautiful and amazing, and even miraculous in some cases. So today I've invited a special lady to join us to discuss this amazing topic. Inspired by her own spiritual awakening, she loves to simplify spirituality so it's easy to understand and practical to apply in everyday life. Her mantra is, life is fun and easy. She's an author, speaker, awareness coach, receiver of the Power of Awareness program, and director of the Awareness Academy. If that's not enough, she is also a trained expert in A Course in Miracles. She's going to help us today to understand the concept in much more detail. So please join me in welcoming my good friend and colleague, Laina Orlando, to our show today. Welcome, Laina. It's so great to have you back on Life Mastery TV. It's been too long, and I'm just really glad that you're here today.
Oh, I am honored to be here. As always, I love our conversations.
Yeah, we do. And speaking of conversations, in case you folks don't know this, Laina and I do a kind of a impromptu secondary thing that we call wake-up calls, that we do these on Facebook Live a couple of times a month. If you'd like to just follow us, you can check those out and share with us there too. Laina, I want to get started on today's topic. Now, I know that you have been very much involved in the Course in Miracles, the books, the teachings, and I know that you've been doing this for, I think, like about 10 years or so now. I know that you have become a teacher in this area. I'm curious, before we even get into the topic of miracles, what was it in your life that was going on that led you to that path in the first place? This is something that I think a lot of people can benefit from. And I'm wondering if you're willing to share that.
Absolutely. What was going on at that time was I was literally sandwiched between the two men that I loved more than anything in the world. One was my husband at the time, and the other one was my son. And my son was going through what I called a drug adventure, where he was very adventurous with all kinds of different drugs and alcohol. So he was going through an addiction, a severe addiction problem. And at the same time, I had just recently gotten married. My son is doing drugs, and what I'm finding that is happening, that my husband had no patience with my son doing drugs. My drug addict son had no patience with a stepfather who was trying to tell him what to do. And I find myself basically in the middle going, God, well, what do you have me do? What can I do? At this point, I'd already been teaching spirituality for quite a while. And I knew that everything is nothing more than a choice between coming from love or coming from fear. And I taught that for a very long time. I only teach one process called shift and lift, and you shift out of fear and you lift into the frequency of love. But my way of doing it just wasn't cutting it. And what I realized is that I was applying the love of the world. And it wasn't until I began to realize that I needed to amp up, to a kind of a love that I really wasn't so familiar with, and be able to deal with what was going on between these two men that I loved. How could I be the mother and the wife, help both or be loving to both and not be all stressed out? I got the nudge at that time to start reading A Course in Miracles. And I began to read A Course in Miracles. And one of the very first things that I discovered in one of the very first chapters, I believe it's in chapter 2, where I realized that I was being asked to practice perfect love. And that's when it hit me. I know the difference between fear and love as the world teaches, but I did not know perfect love. And the Course in Miracles was what began to teach me about perfect love. So, and this was in 2010 is when my son started doing drugs. I got married the same year. Both things happened about the same time. And then I student into the Course in Miracles in actually December of 2011, and it was January 1st of 2012 that I began to do the lessons, 365 lessons, and started going all the way through. So technically, I've been studying the course for 8 years. It'll be 9 years starting in January.
Right, that's fabulous, and I really love that the shift and lift idea. Because that's really what we're doing, isn't it? We're trying to help people shift out of their current paradigm and lift up to a higher level of consciousness, which is, I think, a beautiful thing to do. And of course, as you know, and I know this because you and I have spoken many, many times, the first person who needs to do the lifting is me. I have to do my own lifting. And sometimes it's difficult to do my own lifting. And so this is where we start looking for people like you and me and others, I suppose, who are in the world of trying to raise consciousness. We look for people like that who have learned different techniques to make the job of lifting easier and more enjoyable and more fulfilling. And I think that's one of the things that A Course in Miracles does. It helps to create that sense of fulfillment by teaching us, the things that maybe aren't working so well in our lives now in the physical realm, and the things that can help us to lift out of that and into a more spiritual and love-centered approach to life.
Well, yes, but the thing about the Course in Miracles is that it is not ambiguous. There is no room for interpretation if you're going to follow it to the letter. And one of the things that is really, really clear is that if you want to learn what is perfect love, what is the love of God, it is a very simple kind of a love. And the Course has taught me that the way you embody that type of love, there is gentleness, there is defenselessness, there is honesty. There are so many things that are not part of our conditional type love, because perfect love places absolutely no conditions on anybody, on anything external for you to be loving. And that was a kind of love that I was not familiar with. So the Course to me is extremely simple, very, very, very simple. but it seems very complicated because what happens is our mind has been conditioned with a very complicated idea of what love is. If you do things for me, I love you. If it's all conditional. So we have to unravel the complicated way in which we have learned to love, be able to receive the simplicity of the course, which is basically you love because you're just loving yourself. That's it. Love is all there is.
Correct.
So it's a beautiful process. And the lifting part is really to ascend, to look at life from the perspective of God. And we don't understand the perspective of God because we have been confused with religion. When we are taught, especially if you grow up, and I grew up Catholic, and I grew up hearing that we're made in the image of God, and I'm going, okay, I'm made in the image of God. And then they tell me God is on a cloud somewhere, and it's like Santa Claus, sorts you if you're nice and it punishes you if you're naughty. So I'm confused about, okay, I'm made in the image of God and God is on a cloud. Am I on a cloud? Am I naughty? Am I nice? How does this work? So my mind was very confused about God when I was little. I was hearing things like the kingdom of heaven is within. So if the kingdom of heaven is in me and I could go to hell, how can heaven be in me? And I'm going to go to very, very confusing. Yep. So the mind has to be unraveled from the confusion that the world teaches to enter into the simplicity of the path of really understanding the truth of who we are, because we are made in the image of God. And bottom line, what is God? God is love. And so if God is love and you're made in that image, then I am love. I had no idea I was love. I thought I had to get love. So very confusing, very confusing.
Yeah, it is very confusing. And in a way, that in itself is kind of miraculous to me, because it is because of that confusion that I have been able to get a clear sense of who I am. I think I had to go through the not knowing in order to find the knowing. Maybe that I mean, I shouldn't say that anybody has to do that, but it seemed like that was the necessary path for me.
I haven't met a single
necessary path for everybody, but
I haven't met a single person who comes to know who they are until they first see who they're not.
Yeah, it's a really interesting journey, and I have to admit that while I was in the not knowing side of it, I wasn't a very pleasant person to be around. And I mean, I didn't see it that way. I thought I was just a normal, nice guy. But some people saw things differently. And
me too.
Yeah. And so I was not happy. I was not happy mainly because I had forgotten who I was. But I didn't know that at the time. And that's, I think, the problem that most people are struggling with right now. They say, I have no idea. Even our Constitution talks about the pursuit of happiness. So we have this notion that happiness is out there somewhere and that we have to chase it.
Yeah.
When in fact, as you say, it's already right here.
Well, as a matter of fact, the Course in Miracles states that our purpose, God has given us one purpose, and that purpose is happiness. There is no confusion in there. Your purpose is to be happy, a characteristic of one who is embodying the essence of the consciousness that is the Christed consciousness. It's not about Jesus. Jesus embodied that Christed consciousness. All of us have that Christed consciousness. When you embody that, is because within your body, is the image of the creative source, which is love, and then you extend it out. So that's what makes you happy, happiness and joy. And again, we have the confusion of the world. I mean, we see commercials that tell us, you have a Coke and then you have a smile, that you have McDonald's makes you happy. It's all of these things that have confused our mind, that have trained us into becoming seekers of all of the things that we actually are bringers of. So we got to undo all of that what sent us out to excavating and finding what we came to bring, because all of us came to bring our happy selves.
Oh, that's a beautiful line. I just have to repeat that. We have trained ourselves to be seekers of that which we already bring.
Yeah,
And the problem is we don't realize that we bring.
exactly.
That's
Exactly.
that's beautiful. I like that. That's something I hadn't thought about framing it in that way, but I love that angle.
Well, and we learn that when we're so little because we learn that from our parents. Our parents taught us when mom said, "You made me so mad. I'm not happy with your behavior. I'm not," or dad says it, or grandma, or whoever. We heard growing up many, many times, "I'm not happy with this mess." So people were letting us know that their happiness was dependent on our behavior.
Yeah.
So well, we were trained into, well, your behavior will make me happy. And until you change your behavior, I can't be happy. And
Right.
we never question those things. And we're not that. We're not someone who depends on others to be happy. That's not who we are. So we have to unravel all of that.
Right. And I think it's even worse than that, actually. The way you frame it is quite correct, I believe, where as a parent, I might say something like my happiness depends on how you show up. But to the child on the other side, that's being received as, oh, I'm somehow responsible for your happiness. I have to do everything to make you happy. That's how we hear it when we're children. And so consequently, we spend a great deal of our lives trying to do things so that other people around us aren't angry, aren't afraid, aren't sad, are happy. It's like we take on that role. And when we discover it doesn't work, guess what? That's when we start to lose our sense of happiness.
Yeah,
We're saying,
exactly.
this isn't working. This thing that you've been teaching me all these years doesn't work.
Yeah, but worse, there's another step to that makes it even more profound, and it's really why the world is in such chaos. Is not only are we believing that it's my job to make you happy, when it doesn't work because it can't. When we don't make others happy, then we begin to think there's something wrong with me.
Yes.
I'm not okay.
Yes.
And in the I'm not okay comes this egoic sense of controlling others and getting others to do what I need you to do for me to be okay, which gives us a false sense of power over, right. But it's power that is being used over others. And we see that all over the world right now, people trying to control each other. I mean, all of these wars that killed people in the name of God, how crazy is that? Until I kill you people, we're not going to be okay. Well, right. So that's the most extreme, but it's what we do inside all the time. We kill.
And by the way, I'm not laughing because I enjoy it. I'm laughing because the way we think is so messed up.
It is messed up.
It is laughable.
Well, the Course in Miracles says that what we have are mad ideas. We are operating with mad ideas in our mind, and it has created a world that is upside down and inside out.
Yeah.
I mean, it is totally, completely not what God had designed. God's source, it doesn't matter what you call it. I mean, it knows what it is. We're the ones to give it whatever names we need to give it to make us feel good, to make us happy. But it knows what it is, and it is very clear that it is a presence, it is an essence, it is an isness that just is love. And the reason it's love, it's because it accepts all as it is, and it's just, that's what perfect love is. And that is when I began to understand perfect love. Then I had to begin to apply it with my son and with my husband. And that's when I began to have to really test myself. And that's when I began to understand what miracles really are. Because every one of us is a source of miracles. We are. And the miracle is only necessary while we're in this illusion of separation and we're believing things that are not true. But once we know the truth, you don't need a freaking miracle, because, a miracle is just a shift in perception. And once you know truth, you're done with a miracle. So the miracle is just a tool, a temporary tool, like a bridge to get us back to the truth of who we are.
And that's really the ultimate goal, isn't it? Back to the truth of who we are.
Yeah.
And, you and I have come to the same conclusion from different pathways. And I think this is why we resonate so well when we're communicating, because, I think we both see the same truth and we both try and share the same truth. And we come at it from different perspectives, and we try to help people find that truth for themselves. And I love the Course in Miracles. I've been through it, and I enjoy the reading and stuff. It hasn't resonated with me to the same level that I want to take that on as my own personal teaching, but I still get a lot out of it, and I encourage people to read it, because you never know what's going to wake up somebody from the slumber of forgetting who they are.
Yeah.
And A Course in Miracles is a great place to start, for sure.
Well, and for many people, it's not a great place to start, and because it is so detailed in what we have to do. I mean, it states over and over and over and over and over again that you have to have a consistent willingness. And the Course in its introduction says it is a required course. What you can do is decide how much time you want to take to understand what the Course teaches, but it is required. And nobody is going to wake up without understanding what the Course is saying. But what the Course is saying is also said in many different places. And it's very simple. Hinduism teaches the same thing. And if people really studied the essence of Hinduism, not the dogma that has been created around Hinduism or Buddhism or any of these beautiful teachings, or even mystical Christianity, when you move out of the dogma and you go to really where the essence of the teachings are, it all brings us into oneness. And if we spend more time finding out what the hell is oneness, I mean, I didn't know what oneness was. I thought oneness was we're all in one planet. But it's so much more than that. It is so deep, and you cannot understand oneness with your head. Oneness is something you feel in your heart. But until you feel it, then you can begin to really realize how confused you are, because the feeling of oneness alters your perception of the world. And the teachings are to orient the mind, to get the mind to come in alignment with what the heart already knows. So whatever path you have to come to get to the recognition of what perfect love is, because only perfect love casts out fear. And what is fear? Fear is the result of our not knowing who we are. And so we have to come to know who we are, which is why the Course is a required course, because that's all it teaches is what you are, period.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think the way I interpret that is there's only one thing you need to know. And that is a required knowledge, which is the truth of who you are.
Yeah.
And there are many ways of getting there. The Course in Miracles is not the only way, and plenty of people have gotten to the truth of who they are without the Course in Miracles. But A Course in Miracles, that's why I say it's a great start for people who really want to get down to the truth of who they are. I'm kind of curious how you folks who are watching right now, if you have any comments about this. What's your perspective on miracles? What's your perspective on oneness? What does it mean to you to know who you really are? If you've got some input, we'd love to hear your comments. So please feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. Laina, one of the things that I know, you and I, independently of each other, came to this same quote from Albert Einstein, who said, "There are only two ways to live your life." Oh God, I just lost it. Where did it go? Hang on. Here it is. There are only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. I love that. I think that it's a really, really good way of seeing things. You know, if he creates a dichotomy, I think it's actually a false dichotomy, but it puts us in a position where we can choose. If there are miracles, then everything is a miracle.
Well, yes, because when we understand what we are, and we all return into the essence of who we are, the truth of who we are, and we discover that what we are is loving beings, then the world, everything is a miracle, because everything is created from love, by love, to love. There's just nothing else when you understand truth. If you want to know ultimate reality is that everything is love. It's what it was created to be loved. It was created to extend love. It was created to participate in nothing but a loving experience. Then on the other side is it's either all miracles, which is all love, or it's like it's not. There's not a miracle. And when we have been trained that a miracle is something like you were reading earlier on, something unusual, like raising somebody from the dead. Well, when you understand the metaphysics of everything, you really begin to understand that what powers everything is love. The only reason Lazarus rose from the dead is because Jesus loved him back into life, and God loved us into life. That's why even in the Constitution, like you said, we're talking about the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness, because those three things go together. You cannot be happy if you don't have life, and life inherently is liberty. You're here to express that happiness however the heck you want to express it.
Exactly.
So it is in either you have love in your life or you don't. Either you have miracles in your life or you don't. Those words are synonymous, miracles and love. They're the exact same thing. And what is our sweet Lorelei saying?
Well, she says, I'm a student of A Course in Miracles, and it has literally changed my life like nothing else. It is a practice, a discipline, and daily devotional for me. Thank you, Laina. Well, Lorelei, I'd like to hear more, if you care to share, in what way has it literally changed your life? I'd like to just hear, a couple of sentences about what it has done for you. I know it's going to take you a minute or two to think that up and put it in the chat, but we'll get to it when you respond. So this idea of having a choice to either believe that nothing is a miracle or everything is a miracle, that leads to this next question, which is, so what would life be like for you if you believed that everything was a miracle? I think that's an interesting thing for people to contemplate. How would you respond to that?
Well, very simply, based on A Course in Miracles, a miracle is a shift in perception. We shift from perceiving the world as adversaries, as separate from me, as something that is out there that I got to protect and defend myself from. When we're operating with that sense of I've got to protect me from the other, we are literally operating with a consciousness that says, I am by myself here and I got to take care of me. So when our mind becomes so confused in who we are, and we come to the place where we believe that I am not enough, I'm not good enough, there's something wrong with me, it sends us into needing to protect ourselves. And because we're protecting ourselves, we create a wall around ourselves. What we're doing is we're blocking all of that love that is inside of us from extending out. We can't feel, the only way you feel love is when it's moving. It's like a pond. When it's still, it doesn't know it's water. It's just stillness. But when water is flowing, there is a movement. You feel what water is. Wow, there has to be the movement for the feeling to happen. So the way that we are shifting into miracle mindedness is to see this wall that we have built upon ourselves and allow that love of God that God is to be freed out of us, and that is what makes us come alive. So life, liberty, happiness all happens when you remove the barriers that we have built that block love. So how would the world be if everybody operated as if, in miracle mindedness? We would be loving to each other, because we would know that the only way we can to extend it to those around us, let it flow out of us. And actually, that's the only way you can be happy is to free up the life that is inside of you by extending it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I've often heard it said that love is the only substance or energy or whatever you want to call it, that the more you give it away, the more you have it. And that's exactly what you're talking about, because by giving it away, I'm inducing the flow.
Exactly. It multiplies.
It has to come back to me.
It multiplies.
And that's where I feel more of it.
Yeah, think about a hose or just a spigot. So when the water is behind, we turn it off, we block it. When you open up the spigot, water flows. So much of it comes out. I mean, tons. It's never ending. There's an endless supply of water and an endless supply of love inside of us. But we've been conditioned to go look for love outside of ourselves. that we don't know that it's inside of ourselves, and we don't allow it to flow and extend itself. And like Kenneth is saying, walking the kingdom of heaven on earth, that is exactly how we walking the kingdom of heaven on earth. The kingdom of heaven is within us. What is within us is a supply of love that when we extend it to everybody creates heaven. So we are the bringers of heaven to the planet. Like Laura, read what Lorelei said.
I was just waiting for you to finish there. I was going to
go for it. It's beautiful.
She responded to my request for more information. She says, when I remember that my purpose is to be happy by being the light of the world, I am guided how to do that, to be of value and service on the planet. And if there were ever a time for us to be the light of the world, it is now. Yeah, amen to that. I totally agree.
It is now, and that's what the Course teaches, and that we are the light of the world. And if we want to walk in the kingdom of heaven, then, as Kenneth wrote, then we have got to be willing to remove the blocks and barriers that we have built to love. Let this love flow. And when we're loving each other, are we going to have wars? No. But here's the most amazing thing about when we learn to love ourselves and learn to love others. We stop being controlled by anybody and stop being manipulated into fearing one another, into hating one another, into judging one another. And one of the most important things to bring about the kingdom of heaven on earth is that we have to find our sovereignty. We have to find that we are made in the image of God and find out what is that image. Because once our mind is not confused about where the true source of power lies, we will not rely on external, authority figures to give us the power that is already inside of us.
Yeah. And, it's interesting. You bring up sovereignty and I immediately go to authority. You and I think alike, and I think we have parallel tracks of thought going on here. And I often think, all right, how do I get people to understand that the authority of, let's say, a government, for example, is just something that we have given to them. We have authorized them, really, to run things on our behalf. That's supposedly how governments are supposed to work. And yet we see so many examples in our world of governments which have really turned evil and basically suppressed people, enslaved them, kind of tried to crush them and bring them down until they absolutely cannot really rise up anymore. We see this happening all over the world, and even potentially here in the United States. And it's something that this light of the world thing that we're talking about, once we get to the truth of who we are, if all of us can do that, then that sort of thing just can't happen anymore. The problem is we still have people who aren't there yet. So how do we help them to transcend, as you call it, transcend this training that they've had to deal with?
Yeah. Well, the first thing that we need to understand, and Kenneth writes here, would it be fair to say that the miracle is the revealing that what I call perfect love is perfect love and not a false concept? The only way for what we call perfect love to be perfect love is when you feel it within you and you know that what you are is what everybody else is. Because from that place of perfect love, you are really recognizing that we're all brothers and sisters. We're all children, holy beings, children of the same creative source of all that is. So that perfect love, we have to move it from the false concept in our mind into the embodiment of the truth of what it actually is. And it really, truly is a oneness. It's a knowingness that we are all one.
Right. And you're absolutely right. But the problem is, as you already know, we have these things called ego minds. We all have them. And those of us who are still trapped inside that ego mind with no apparent way out, it feels like this is life. This is just the way it is. But to find that truth, you have to somehow you have to take the illusion and blow it up. You have to get rid of the illusion. And that's not a trivial thing You know, when once you've done it and you come to the truth of who you are and you understand that it's really just an illusion, then it becomes a question of saying, why did this take me so long? But right now, because we have the challenge of the ego mind, and some people are stuck in that ego mind, they may not be able to make that move outward or away from the ego mind and into the truth of who they are. Are you still there? Laina, it looks like you froze. I just want to make sure you're still here.
Yes, I was listening to, it was a little jumbled up, so I didn't hear everything, but the general concept, we were talking about the ego mind and how do we, sorry, we've got the lawnmower people are here today and they're just outside. But anyhow, that ego mind is really the false sense of self, because when we get really clear that the ideas that we pick up in childhood that tell us that we're not perfect love, that that teach us about conditional love, that fill our minds with constructs and ideas and a sense of we're less than anybody else or better than anybody else. That egoic mind creates all of those false concepts that block perfect love. And that is, until we can look at that, we cannot bring about the level of internal sovereignty, the level of connection with God within, so that we can then become the light of the world. So
I totally agree with you there. And what I'm saying is, many people have not done the kind of work that you and I have done. And so they're still living in this illusion of the ego mind. And to try and persuade them to consider the possibility that they have an illusion that's guiding their life, and that if they go into their heart, they'll find the truth of who they really are. That is a difficult proposition. So what I'm trying to find is a way of inviting people into that, inviting them, say, why don't you just check this out, without necessarily making it sound like, I don't care whether you do it or not. I mean, it's your choice. That's really ultimately how I want it to come across. But there has to be a way to get people to, aside from the obvious spiritual 2x4 across the side of the head, there's got to be a way. And I like what Lorelei says, we invite them by our example. And yes, I agree, that is absolutely true.
Yeah. There's
but
really
some people are still going to be very caught. And you talked about the protective shield. They're going to be like that for a long time, and finding a way through that shield is the part that I find challenging.
I find that there's two ways that people come into the curiosity. One is through there's a discomfort that they want to get away from, so they start searching and seeking the self-help books, and I want to make my life better. Typically, it starts with either I want to heal my relationship, or I want to make more money, or want to get another job. That kind of tends to be the first steps that people enter into self-help. The other way is they watch examples. They observe, I want to be like Jesus. I want to be peaceful like this one through the midst of what's going on. Right now, we have the perfect storm happening in the world. We have been, because our minds have been conditioned, we are easily divided into two camps, because for there to be control, there has to be, two sides to control and pit against each other. And we have been trained into taking a side, because as long as we're taking a side against something else or for something else, while we're being distracted in the game of separation and judgments and duality, we can't come inside to find our peace. So right now, while there is such an intense activation of duality, whether it's the different political parties, or who's for masks and who isn't, who's for vaccines and who's not, who's for liberty and who's not, who's for guns and who's not. While we're divided into that game of duality, then we cannot come into knowing the singularity of perfect love inside. We have to see a model. We have to see who is peaceful in the middle of all this craziness in the world. Who is not wigging out? I get messages that people will send to me. They see things that I post, and I don't engage in arguing with anybody. I won't, because again, the Course in Miracles teaches the characteristics of one who embodies Christ consciousness. And defenselessness is one of the characteristics. As a matter of fact, the Course says, in my defenselessness, my safety lies. If I want to feel safe in my truth, I don't need to defend it. Anybody who's defending their position is trying to convince somebody else about something they themselves are not certain. Because if I get you to agree with me, then I get to be right about it. So there's a lot of effort in getting you to agree with me so that I get to be right versus in questioning my own beliefs and finding out maybe possibly I was wrong. So that defending aspect that the Course has taught me is crucial, that we let go of defending. Well, the people who are not defending, the people who are just sharing, who are peaceful, who are stating what they believe, are the examples that are going to be leading the way. Because even in the spiritual world that you and I are in, there are a lot of spiritual people who have taught many people about spirituality, but their walk and their talk are not congruent. And we're witnessing that. So people are going to start following those who are embodying inner peace, because frankly, that's what we all want, because that is that's the highest frequency. When you are in that peaceful state of beingness, you're one with everything. You have to be in conflict to lose your peace. And we're sick of conflict. We're tired of conflict. We're conflicted out. Now there's a desire for peace, and those are going to be the ones that are the examples that people are going to follow.
Yeah, that's great. I see Dwayne wrote, he's talking about how the scripture teaches us to love our neighbor as ourselves, and yet so many people don't love themselves. Sad but true. I totally agree with that. I think part of what we've been talking about here, the way the ego mind works and the things that we have been taught to serve and put the needs of everybody else ahead of ourselves. The unspoken message underneath that is, you're not important. But that's the message that we are given, and we take it upon ourselves, and consequently, we don't believe that we are lovable. We don't believe that we are worthy. We don't believe that we have the power that God gave us. Yeah. And consequently, we don't love ourselves. So thank you for bringing that up. And I think, as you were saying, Laina, the moment we can kind of get back away from the ego mind and into the truth and into the spirit and the essence of who we really are, it becomes much easier to love ourselves. And when we love ourselves, then it becomes even easier to love others. So the cycle is, well, just to use a word that we've been kind of bandying about, it's a miracle.
It is. It is a miracle. And that is ultimately the miracle that the Course is leading us to. And I mean, it's called a Course in Miracles. But again, if the word miracle is love, it is a course in love. As Marianne Williamson wrote a book about A Course in Miracles, and the title is A Return to Love. The book that I'm writing about what the Course in Miracles has done for me, the title of it is because the Course says that there's only two possibilities. Either love is present, or there is a call for love. So the title of the book I'm writing is It's a Call for Love. Because when I was in the middle of my experience between Spencer, my son, and my husband, Ken, at the time, it was a call for love. I was being called into perfect love. And what I needed to teach my son, the only reason he was reaching out for drugs and alcohol is because he didn't love himself. So what I was attempting to do those 4 years that we were on that crazy adventure together was to help him question all of his beliefs that had him self-loathed. Because until he learned to love himself, he would not continue to poison his body with drugs and alcohol. So as Dwayne is saying, it is he couldn't love anybody because he didn't love himself. So the last thing that I was going to do was to punish a son who was calling for love. And then when my husband at that time was so jealous of all the time that I was spending with my son, because we were relatively newlyweds, and here my teenage son is taking up a lot of my time. So he was getting jealous. He was getting resentful of my son. That was a very challenging time to be with an adult man who's jealous of a child. Right. This is my child, so I'm mama bear here. Yeah, so right. when I realized, okay, so I got two men here, one who doesn't love himself and is drugging himself to feel better, one who doesn't love himself and is blaming my son for him not being happy, I'm going, oh my God, the only thing that is necessary here is calling love in. And I realized that if I was going to be mad and angry and blaming and bashing the two of them, I was stuck in a triad, a total egoic triad that was going nowhere. I had to pull myself out of the adversary, between the two of them hating each other because they're blaming each other for not getting enough of my time, was to come inside and learn to love me with perfect love. Yeah. I had to go deeper in my journey, and most of us enter the spiritual journey and get all spiritually, our ego gets all spiritualized, and it creates its own form of spiritual love.
There's a lot of that going around.
Oh yeah, I had to move beyond that into perfect love. And I'm still, you know what? I am still working into perfect love, because my entire life, our entire lives, like the Course in Miracles says, are a classroom. When the lesson is learned, we don't have to reincarnate again. So as long as I'm here, I'm learning, am I being the presence of perfect love, or is this a call for perfect love? Period. Nothing else. And the miracle is a shift into perfect love.
So there's a couple of things that I wanted to just bring in that I thought were important. First, when someone has a difficulty loving themselves, and I recognize that, and I have a sense of, I want to share love with you. I can say I love you to this person an unlimited number of times, and that's not going to change that person's self-love at all. But that does help me at least to share love with that person, and maybe that will be kind of a catalyst, I guess, to help that person begin to love him or herself. But the other thing I wanted to say is, what better time than right now in our country, right now, where we're going through this election process, where a president has yet to be chosen, and we are facing the possibility of one person or another being elected president. The question is, can we have love for both of those men, regardless of who wins? I think that would be a challenge for all of us to look at. And if we can do that, if we can have unconditional and perfect love present for both of those men, regardless of the outcome of the election, maybe we can help to create healing on the planet.
Oh, absolutely. And, one of the amazing things about this journey that both you and I have been in, our own personal journey, is that it is a journey that we come to understand perfect love through a game. And that game is called projection. And if we do not understand what we're projecting upon these two candidates, if we don't understand that we are all of our hate, all of our anger, all of our disgust is a projection onto them of the very things that block us from understanding perfect love. So we cannot experience perfect love for anybody while we're projecting conditional love. So is there an opportunity to actually truly love everybody? Yes, because love is what we are. It's a natural inside each and every one of us, but we have to have the reset button, hit that reset button, turn the switch on to begin to shine the light of love. I believe that the current situation in this country, excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. And the world is a reflection of the internal battle within, where there is it's a battle of, it's an energy. Of course, yeah. It's a battle between dark and light. You can call it good and evil, because it is for me, it is really very easy to see. I choose my candidates. I choose whatever it is that I'm doing based on who is extending the most love possible. Because for me, what we are having to choose between is who operates more from ego versus less from ego, who operates more from love versus less from love. If you keep it that simple, It's not personal. It's not about the personality. It is about who is listening to the voice for God within, or who is blocking more of the voice for God within. All of us have access to that voice. All of us know to do the right thing. All of us know to be kind. But we've got these politicians that have been trained to bash each other. So when I look at the amount of bashing, I discard all of that and I go down to, okay, what are these people doing for the people? Because the bashing is just the show. It's just the surface stuff to distract people from what's really going on. But when you go below that, who is actually more in service to humanity? That is where I measure somebody who's listening to the voice for God. Because someone who listens to the voice for God operates in oneness, in extension, in sharing. One who operates listening more to the voice for ego is in more, what can I get from me? How can I support myself? How can I benefit myself? So when I look at anything, that's how I make my determination. It is really about who is more in alignment, oneness, who is more in alignment with separation. And we can come to the place that we can love all candidates, because just as Jesus taught, we need to forgive those who know not what they're doing. And if anybody is being selfish, they don't know what they're doing. They really have lost their minds. They do not know what they're doing to the world, the pain, the suffering that is being inflicted. They don't know that because they don't feel their own pain. And the reason you don't feel, like my son, when he was doing drugs, he couldn't feel the pain of his suffering because he numbed himself with drugs and alcohol. People numb themselves with sex. They numb themselves with power. They numb themselves with money. They numb themselves with, whatever they want to numb themselves with. I numbed myself from a lot of my pain by looking for validation, by having people like me, by having people think I was so, magnificent or whatever. So can we love all of these people? Yes, that is what the big lesson is here. That is exactly precisely why those of us who let me see, who was it? It was Lorelai being an example. And Dwayne was saying that, you got to learn to love yourself so we can love others. We are in the space that we have an opportunity to make manifest on this planet the embodiment of the essence of the truth of who we are. And No. If you guys can hear us, can you type into the chat? Can you hear me? Can you hear David? So that we know where the issue is. Is it on my side? Is it on his side? David, go ahead and speak.
I'm here.
Okay, now I can hear you. Perfect.
Yeah, I was just listening to you, and all of a sudden your whole image and your voice just started breaking up here on my.
Okay. So I asked them to type so they can hear me, but you were going in and out. Okay, cool.
I don't know.
It's a frequency.
Anyway, what I would say, I wanted to talk a little bit about this projection idea. You had mentioned about how we were projecting, the hatred and the anger and the fear and all the rest of it onto these people. And, we were getting equal amounts of projection onto both of the major candidates. And that seemed to be happening. But here's what I also noticed is that the things that we liked about the candidates are also forms of projection. They are coming from our own personal experience.
Yeah.
Maybe they're qualities that I wish I could express more in my own life. Or maybe they're qualities that I recognize that I have, but I haven't really developed to the same degree or something like that.
Yeah.
But all of it really boils down to projection. And this is why I think you're right. Projection helps us to see the truth of who we are as we put it out there. But the thing is, the real truth is down in here. It's down inside. And that's what we have to come back to, because that's where love resides. It's
Exactly.
within our true nature. And if we can get there, the more of us who can get there, the more love there will be in the world around us. There will be less of this fear and anger and hatred and everything else that we've been creating. And so I'm hoping that regardless of what happens in this election, I'm hoping that we can somehow find a way to heal the division and bring more love into the equation, which would make it a true miracle in my mind.
Well, yes, and as the title of this, A Source of Miracles, we are the source of miracles. And by having conversations like this and sharing it, and those of you watching, if you found this something that moved you or that you connect with, share this with other people, because people really want to know that there is another way, but they don't know how to get to that way, or they've been floundering and stuck in a cul-de-sac of another way that is more of a distraction, and it's time for them to move on. But the more of us that are speaking to the truth of who we are, that are not engaging in the battles, trying to convince them. That's why I don't defend what I say. I post it and I'm done with it. It's going to be really important to really be that example, because there is no way to feel the perfect love, the perfect peace that we want to experience if we don't extend it. This is why we have to be the change we want to see in the world.
Exactly.
And I'm going to use this as a call to all of the spiritual teachers out there, spiritual healers, teachers, whatever, that are walking around talking about love, and then they're judging those people who didn't vote the way they did, or who don't see COVID the way that they do, or who don't see, whatever it is, the way that they do, because in that judgment, like you said, we're projecting an internal judgment against ourselves. When you are loving towards others, you're projecting love. That's it, because it's extending. That's what projection is. It's we're sending out. There's just nothing else. That's the way projection works. So it is.
Kind of like what Lorelei is doing there. She's projecting.
She is. She's projecting great love. Yeah, that is the name of the game. I don't know. I can't remember what you said for that, but it is about extending love.
She says here, Laina is such a clear, pure channel of the divine. And I'm thinking, yes, that is true. And so are you, Lorelei.
Projecting that. You're projecting that on me, Lorelei.
That's right. And that's the beauty of this kind of conversation, is we get to see our projections. We get to share our projections, and we get to own them.
Yeah.
Which helps us then to, as you say, be the change we want to see in the world, because that's precisely what we're doing.
And that's the invitation to all of these, people who talk it but don't walk it, is look at your projections until we look. And I'm focusing my work next year. I only want to work with teachers and with coaches and healers, people who really have done a lot of the internal work, and help them refine that projection part. Because this judging of anybody, this maintaining any kind of fear that this one wins, if you're in fear, you're going to judge. And if you're judging, you are distracting yourself from seeing your fears. And you're hoping somebody else's external is going to save you. And nothing from the outside is going to save you, because salvation is an inside job. It's an inside job.
Exactly right. And
that's why we are a source of miracles. We are the source of miracles. So anyway.
Well, Laina, we have just about run out of time here.
Oh, no.
It's been an absolute pleasure and an honor to have you here again on Life Mastery TV. Before I wrap up, is there any final words you'd like to offer as a closing before I take over?
Well, the only thing that I would like to say is that we are created in the image of God. And when you come to understand what God really is, it is perfect love. There's just nothing better, nothing more delicious. And I would like to encourage everybody to come to know what God is. And you can only know it within your heart. It's an inside job. It truly is an inside job, because when we come to the place that we recognize that every one of us is an embodiment of God, from that place, you claim your sovereignty. What comes with sovereignty is happiness, creativity, well-being, health, everything that you could possibly want and ever need to have a truly, completely fulfilled life. It's going to come from the inside. But we won't come inside until we become willing to look for the truth of who we are. So you are God. Now own that, learn about that, and embody that, because that's what makes us magnificent.
Beautiful. Thank you, Laina. And friends, just so you know, you can find out more about Laina Orlando at her website, lainaorlando.com. That's LAINAORLANDO.com, lainaorlando.com. Go check it out, find out more about her, sign up for some of her free stuff there, and yeah, get a connection. This is great. I want to thank you all for watching today's program, and for those of you who are watching the recording, thank you for doing that. And everyone, I just want to remind you, you can catch recording of this and all other episodes on my website at lifemasterytv.com. That's life-mastery-tv.com. I truly hope you enjoyed this presentation. In a few hours, you're going to receive an email with a link to a survey form, and I'm hoping that you'll follow through on that and go and leave a survey. It helps us to spread the word. And if you can find it in your heart, leave us a 5-star review, that would be awesome. However, I want you to be honest and authentic and true about what it really means to you. And finally, to everyone, I just want to remind you about the daily practice that I invite people into, and it's called the Life Mastery Mantra. It goes like this. I gratefully forgive the imperfect being I have been in the past. I gratefully accept the magnificent being I am right now. I gratefully welcome the evolved being I am becoming in each new moment. So until we meet again, my name is David McLeod, your Life Mastery Coach, and wishing you much love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey. Bye-bye for now. We'll see you next time on Life Mastery TV.